Oh, good. You hear me? You heard me? What I said? Welcome. Very much welcome. Very much welcome to see you all. A big group at the end of the conference. And I think we will have a very interesting discussion this 1 hour. And it's also, I would say, it's so good to see Enrico Zio back on the stage where he belongs. That is really important. For what happened on Monday and Tuesday? He was not here. And I don't understand the reason for not coming on ESREL. There is no actually a good reason for not attending Enrico. So I was happy that he was also singing yesterday. At the moment I felt that he was not on the stage. What happened there? I mean, some other people were on the stage, certainly. But Enrico was not there, and he should sing always on our conferences, because that is tradition and we all love it. So that you need to also promise, Enrico.
Yes, boss.
Good, good. So it's today we will have sort of 1 hour discussion. We had got some questions from you the last 3-4 weeks, and we start with them. And I think they are here. And then we will have, after that, we will have discussions that include you even more. So please think about questions that are relevant on topics that is important for you, that you have been sort of thinking about when being at this conference, and also are important for the future of ESRA and ESREL conferences. It's time to leave the floor to Enrico.
Thank you, Tarja. Thank you very much. Again, welcome to this last session for the conference. They didn't give me that holding microphone because they were afraid I would start singing again. So I'll try to keep myself from doing that. And we will start right away with the first question. These are questions that we have received through the emails from you. And we have launched these questions to our expert technical committees to try to get a feedback on how to address them. So the first question was, how should we apply adaptability in life cycle estimation across a range of cases? How can we make life cycle models adaptive, possibly in real time? And do you have some application examples? And we put Piero Baraldi, our chairman of the technical committee on prognostics and something like that. I don't remember. Prognostics and health management. Piero, if you can get a microphone and address this as you see it. How can we adapt or make adaptive this life cycle estimation, the estimation of the duration of life of a component as it lives during the use?
Okay, thank you for the question. So we all know that external operational conditions have an influence on the degradation and failure process of components. And in our reliability models, if we don't take it properly into account the evolution of the external conditions, we are going to do big errors. In our technical committee about prognostic and health management, we speak of the problem of variable operating conditions, or the problem of evolving environment or context changes. And what we usually do is to try to measure signals that are somehow related with the degradation or the operational conditions. So we are online measuring signals, and we want to use this information to update our models. And basically we are trying to modeling the degradation behaviors, and we are trying to put inside our models of the degradation, we try to embed inside our models of the degradation the effect of the external conditions. Just to give you an example, we were tackling the problem of degradation of battery in an evolving environment. So we don't know exactly in the environment where the battery is going to work. We have a physics-based model of the degradation process, but the parameters of these models are influenced by the environment, by the usage of the battery. So what we did has been to measure a quantity, the capacity of the battery. We are measuring online this capacity, and this capacity is related with the degradation and the operating conditions. And basically, using a Bayesian filtering framework, we have been able to find the value of the parameters connected with the environment in which the battery is working. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Piero, for taking your time and giving these insights on how to address this. I don't know if there are any further comments on this, but we can always pick it up again later. Otherwise, we move to the second question. Okay, the second question is regarding the electrical power systems and its, let me say, robustness or its reliability, in particular with respect to nuclear power plants operation. We've heard also in the keynote lectures yesterday afternoon and in other settings that there are, of course, plans to also today in some of the sessions we were talking about the plans of extending the lives of nuclear power plants, of building new nuclear power plants in Europe. And of course, a concern is to see the nuclear power plant within the network to which it belongs, between the system which it belongs, which is typically the electrical transmission network, and therefore the reliability of this network is quite important for providing electricity. Now, I don't remember who gave this question, but we have an expert in this area, which is Marco Cepin. By the way, he's the organizer of, is the general chairman of next year ESREL in Slovenia. And I really don't know who gave this question, but if you want to say something about it.
Well, Enrico, thank you very much for this kind surprise. Actually, we got 1 minute before, so I've got 2 answers. The short answer, and I can be very quick, is of course yes, and I'm done.
Good, thank you very much, Marco. We go to the next question.
And no, you ask me, so I'll spend half an hour now, and you'll be sorry, and never ask me again.
I'll sit down.
Yeah. So, and then when you decide on something, you have always to think about all other things which are living around you. Yeah? So the power system is a quite complex system. I don't recall if any system designed by mankind is more complex than this one. Maybe the aircrafts or something like that. So, and this system is changing. We are introducing many new features into the system. So new power plants, which are not completely power plants, it is new dispersed generation, and new parameters which are connected with the money and selling the electrical power. Those are all things which has to be considered. So electrical power systems and their reliability is an issue which is going to take more and more discussions in future, especially if you remember what was said at the opening plenary. Professor Pate Cornell said, which surprised me very much, and my colleague, dean of our faculty, who is dealing with the smart grids, he wants to introduce smart grids, and Pate Cornell have said, introduction of smart grids may involve more risks to the power system than the benefits which are taken out of them, and those benefits are connected with small sun and wind, etc., etc. And this is the room for large, reliable nuclear power plants which are here and which are going to be there. And nowadays they're safe even without reliable power plants, because diesel generators which are there are okay. So I mean, this would be the other answer, hopefully not too long for my dear colleague Enrico. And if somebody would like to add something, please discuss with him. I would be out of this question now. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this short and long answer, and thank you also for the question, by the way. It was a good question. he was the one that posed the question. I figured it was the best to answer the question himself. So, we go to the third question, okay? The third question is, what is a recommended approach for developing good risk tolerance criteria? And there's a little bit of background text about it. Basically, the concern is that there are many factors to consider when making decisions that relate to risk. Again, as an example, the power distribution or transportation sector. And in this jungle of factors, how do we figure out, within the cost and benefits trade-offs, where to put the useful risk tolerance criteria? Now, given that the example was about critical infrastructure, like the power network, we asked Professor Giovanni Sansavini if he could give it a thought, and he gave it a long thought, and he just woke up, and now he's going to address the answer for this. Risk tolerance criteria is, of course, a very critical problem or issue for our risk management.
Indeed. So thank you very much for thinking of me when addressing the question. And
we
also
always
thank
think
you
of you
to Eivind who asked the question. So actually, I had to study a bit because I haven't heard the word risk tolerance criteria before. So I had to go.
I thought you were saying you never heard the word risk
before. No, tolerance criteria.
That's like your 10th ESREL conference.
So,
I'll be a little bit worried about you.
I have to say there are only 88 entries in Scopus related to this tag risk tolerance criteria, looking for all the fields. So what I have actually seen is that it's mainly developed in the chemical industry, but this is not what I'm going to talk about now. So in the chemical industry, they were actually concerned that the laws did not prescribe a limit to risk. This is what the papers were saying. So there was a study this year, actually, very, very recent, who came up with method to set risk tolerance criteria based on the cost of life of people and other type of factors that can be included in the consequence estimation. So, but apart from that, what I have thought of the question was that three main ideas came up to my mind when this question was given to me. The first one is, well, regulations and laws indeed prescribe maximum numbers for duration of outage, for example, in the distribution grid, or how many customers can be lost during how much time. So the first, I would say, the first prescriptions that have to be respected are the laws and regulations, and these are given usually as a contractual information. And the second one would be, well, if the problem, like the additional text was saying, is that we have so many criteria, outage duration, number of customers without electricity, total amount of energy that is not served, where do we set a threshold for each one of them? Then I was thinking maybe using some multi-attribute utility method or some robust decision making with respect to different objectives could actually help in setting the thresholds. And third idea that is much more related to what we do actually in our lab in Zurich, and then I do also a little bit of advertisement.
Commercial break.
I think that resilience could actually be an interesting concept when you have so many factors, and then you say, is it more important that the duration is short, that the energy not served is small? So the question is, what's the critical societal function that is provided by the electricity distribution? So one could actually identify what are these sets of critical functions, given that the question was also asking there are customers like hospitals that are more important than other industrial customers maybe. So given this set of critical societal functions that could be identified, then one could collapse all of these into this resilience matrix, if anybody will actually define one strong resilience metric. And then the question would be, given that the system is very complex and you can have reserves, the question was asking about reserves, the question was asking about batteries, redundancy, you need to simulate. You cannot just answer this. So you simulate, you see if your system can comply with this minimal societal function. So we define what is the minimal societal function, because maybe we can be without electricity for a day and we could live happily with that. So the question is, how do we set this? And then you present this to the relevant stakeholders. This is...
No, thank you very much. I mean, you gave a very complete picture. I mean, that there is a room for risk assessment. There's room, of course, for decision analysis models to set the threshold. Of course, you picked up the example of the power distribution that was the initiating example for the, or initiating case for the particular question we received. But the problem of risk tolerance criteria, I think it's a very important issue throughout the different industries. I don't know, maybe Tarja want to add something.
Yeah.
I say maybe, but we prepared it before, okay?
I think this is quite
Short
a general discussion concerning the use of sort of limits, acceptance criteria, tolerability limits, often specified by a probability relation to some sort of event, or also a probability distribution, setting some sort of a limit for the optimization. And one can say that, is the problem how to specify that? Or is it actually, should we have it? Because also what you are addressing, and Enrico, what you are saying is that you have some sort of optimization. There are many aspects. I mean, risk is one out of many. And you would not like to sort of have a constraint in your sort of optimization that this is the level, without seeing this in relation to all the other aspects of interest for your activity. And also the fact that risk is not only or easily sort of reflected by just one number is also an issue. Make it a bit complicated. But in the UK, you have this tolerability limit, 10 to minus 3, and also in the Norwegian sort of oil and gas, we have a lot of use of acceptance criteria like that. You perform your risk assessment, you see you are below or above, or the opposite, and then
just turn the hand.
Yeah, and then you see that there have been a lot of discussion about this kind of, is it really the best way of doing it? Is it really the way we should manage risk, by having these sort of predefined, actually that's the issue, is predefined sort of before the risk assessment. But then you come into, first of all, is risk easily described in this way, only through that number? Second, there are other issues also of interest, not only the risk when sort of making decisions concerning risk. So these are issues that makes it quite complicated actually to say this is the way to do it. And I think people struggle a lot to specify one limit because they maybe not would like to have it there. When I worked in the oil industry many years ago, and I was talking about we should have some limit for the gas deliverability to Europe. And some people said we should have 98% deliverability. That was the level. That was sort of from a top level sort of requirement. But then people start to ask, why should we specify that limit if it's the best solution to be a little below it or above it? Maybe that was a better solution from a total economic point of view. And I think that really put the finger on what that sort of discussion is all about. We cannot just see this in isolation from all the other issues that are linked to risk decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe others would like to comment on this?
Yeah.
I want to add to that and kind of bring
Maybe you can say your name.
Vitaly Volovoy from the United States. I
of
used
America.
to be yes. Of America. Thank you. I want to bring a little bit of aviation perspective, because I think that that's one of the, if you're looking, and a lot of times people are referring to aviation as a kind of golden standard and like things work, but one of the things that's interesting there, and they're struggling with this right now, is the fact that traditionally they did specify the rates, you know, of accidents.
Yes.
But if you're looking at certification, there were two important exceptions where everything else was numbers except structures and software. Mm-hmm. So those two were excluded from the total numbers. And it worked to a degree, but now because you can trade off within the subsystems, but you could not trade off, and now it's a lot of kind of talk about targeted level of safeties and all of these things, because you're trying to look at the system level, and you potentially, when you introduce automation, you have these issues. So it is a big challenge, I think, to say there's hard and fast rule. I agree with you that to have one number, because you start talking about these trade-offs, and what used to work and worked really well, because it was within this stovepiped kind of situation where you're comparing apples to apples. You're comparing hydraulics with when you're changing to the electronics. So you can do that within subsystem. But when you're looking at the system as a whole, you have some issues. And in structures, it's really hard to get the numbers there, you know, or software.
Oh yes.
I think there was another comment right behind. No? Maybe no. There's one over there.
I think this is absolutely central and fundamental to international trade and international supply chains, and it's often misunderstood. I'm very surprised you find so few hits, because this is such a common conversation in defence and maritime, my sectors.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So I would have expected it to be the same in other sectors. It's often about differences of approach and language. I was trying to Google, as the others were talking, a paper that's been really, really influential in the States by American Bar Association, criticizing the European approach to risk tolerance and trying to rubbish it, but they fundamentally misunderstood the approach, and trying to say that the aviation approach is the answer. The trouble is that any target is based on the amount of tests and trials and the amount of modeling you can do, whether it ends up as a prescriptive standard based supposedly on empiricism, or whether you're doing it from first principles on a risk-based approach. But when you're trying to make compatible the risk assessment and assemble it into a system or a platform or an infrastructure, you've really got to understand it. Tori's right. I mean, it's fairly straightforward in some ways for UK and Norway, because it's in the law. But the history of the ALARP carrot is really straightforward. It says that you should manage risk between two basic levels of tolerability. The first one was it's probably nothing to worry about if it's about the same risk as you see in the office. So that's the lower bound, or so the upper, and the other bound. I've got my hand upside down as well. It shouldn't be any worse than the worst kind of accident rates of acceptable industries, which typically tend to be fishing, forestry, mining, these kind of things. So if you're in between, then it's just a risk kind of calculation, and so we get a lot of argument with the States about what happens if it's just some small percentile below the test criteria or not, and do we care? So good risk tolerance type criteria, really important, but you shouldn't get fixated with a number. You should get fixated with how did we get to that process? What does it matter? And what's it telling me about the system and its behavior? And you know, all these more kind of rounded things.
What's the knowledge behind it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Eventually.
yes, I agree. That was one. Thank you.
We developed a lot of software tools for assessing of critical systems, also for assessing risk criteria for safety critical systems. And there we always found it's important to look at different types of risk criteria. Like, is the individual local risk okay? Is the individual risk okay? Is the collective risk okay? And then what these tools do is to provide the customer with the risk numbers, but also with sample numbers from other domains. And then what has to start is kind of this discussions. What are reasonable criteria in this context? And I think the main issue is to take account of all types of risk, not only to concentrate on individual risk or risk per hour or something like that, but to look at individual risk, like risk profiles of persons and the collective risks. And then I also think what Professor Saraceni said is going a little bit beyond risk, like thinking of also criteria for resilience or for kind of system functions that are important. I think this is a good idea.
I agree that this is really an important topic. I mean, it's a core topic of risk management. Sort of how should you really formulate these sort of criteria, and it's linked to decision making. So that the kind of discussion is important. And I sort of have some people argue, as you say, sort of individual risk should be sort of you should protect people. You should protect people, and there should be some sort of limit. And then you have the societal sort of concern. But that, and also environmental issues. When it comes to assets, economic aspects, don't talk about it. But even there are some people sort of that like to have this kind of thinking, and that can absolutely be discussed. Tim?
Yeah, I just wanted to add another point about the UK approach to this, which is that alongside the numerical boundaries that they have, actually there's a very, very strong stress on good engineering practice. So that's actually as much as the emphasis on the numbers. So you can't get away with just a calculation which claims that you meet these numbers. You've got to also demonstrate that you're following good engineering practice. And that's in practice, I think, the thing that will keep you away from the boundaries.
And that's one of the things that the Bar Association is.
So,
yes.
However, there is actually a huge arbitrariness, and it's not so much in whether it's 10 to the minus 3 or 3 times 10 to the minus 3, around that boundary. Actually, the arbitrariness is in the unit of assessment, what it is you are looking at. And so are you looking at a large facility? Are you looking at a small facility? Obviously, if you're going to apply the same risk criteria to that, actually, you're then implicitly imposing different things. If you take 2 facilities, right, and if you take one facility and it meets the criteria, and it gets sold off to 2 different companies and split up into 2 ones, then they don't necessarily meet criteria, right? So, and this was the problem they had in the Netherlands when they started to apply the risk criterion that they'd developed for major hazards, which were then applied to, let's say, petrol stations and gas stations used in the city centre. They tried to apply that same risk criterion to Schiphol Airport, and discovered, of course, that it didn't work. And then they had to find all sorts of very, very creative ways around it. Right?
Yeah, that's a good comment. We had the same type of problem in relation to environmental risk. There are some criteria for each offshore installation. I mean, does the environment care about who is the contributor to that? But if you have 10 installations, you would have some other type of risk. So it was a lot of questions about how many would you include in your assessment. And it was predefined. You didn't think about that. So it was just a number game, depending on how many units you're actually including in your sort of bigger picture. Okay.
Move on, and then we can always come back to this, because we move on to the 4th question, which actually somehow it's a sort of like implementation of some of the problems that we have been discussing just now, because we're talking about ISO standards, for example, safety standards, and the problem that they, let's say, impose some formal probabilistic requirements, but however, the basis for these requirements is not clear. The people that are writing the standards maybe don't have it clear themselves. So this question came from a very practical point of view. How can we improve this situation for the designers of the machines that eventually have to meet these probabilistic requirements which are not clear in the standard? And I think that this really comes down to let's say, a communication or an involvement, I would say, problem. We are not, I guess that we are, let's say, experts of these aspects, of the basics for the probability calculations, the probabilistic approaches to certain risk and reliability problems, but then we are not involved in the standard writing. So I think that maybe the answer for this question should be, we need to find a way to have special sessions where we bring together people that are involved in the design of the machine, people that are involved in the standard writing, and you as experts of these formal approaches to probabilistic evaluation of reliability and risk and so on, and really work together. Right now, it seems that there is a separation between really the standard organizations, the standard writing organizations, the designers, and us as probabilistic or as risk and reliability experts. I don't know if there's any opportunity for that, but I think we should create it. So I think we should really create the opening of a debate in this sense, and not being everybody, closed in their own world. Still from the United States of America.
Still from there, right. Still didn't move. Trump has not won yet. All right. I have I know because I talked to Hendrik, who wrote this question, and he actually asked me to mind it for him. And I think it's actually very much relevant to what Tim just mentioned, to the previous talk. It's because basically the concern of the gentleman who wrote this question, he's in charge of this union of the smaller companies, and they're concerned that this kind of standard is too cumbersome for them, and maybe the idea of kind of pooling resources. So if you have a smaller companies, you're looking at the risk at the kind of more aggregated level to get to the same level. And I think that was one of the concerns that he felt that basically they're almost like getting on the level of the nuclear plant for the regular smaller companies that manufacture these highly reliable, in that case it was German machining tools, right, that they have, but they had to comply with this kind of industrial strength large company, and that's kind of what part of what's lost in translation, right? And the experience, like you were talking about in Holland, would be quite relevant there, I think.
But I think that there is work in there, to do in order to bridge this gap and bring the communities together in order to work in a rational sense, I would say. Now, the last question that we received by email is a question about how can we obtain better links, better dynamics between national chapters and the European Safety and Reliability and Association, and how can we develop more international chapters? Do we need such chapters? Why are there? What should they do? And who has a better person to answer a question than our chairman?
Not so easy. I think it's, thank you. But I think we have only one national chapter at the moment. Some years ago, I looked at the internet website, and I saw several, 5, 6. And I tried to investigate are they still alive, or where are they? And it turns out that there's only one, and that is the Norwegian one, and which I know very well. It started in the early 90s, and it's working fantastic. And the question is then, so why is only in Norway, or should we encourage other countries to also establish chapters? The current policy has been from ESREL that we're not doing actually anything.
In general.
ESREL overall. That's a good one.
In general, we're not doing anything. But
we don't do anything.
Become members.
Don't be so precise. Sorry. I think that the initiative must be local. It must be some people that like to do it, and then we support. It cannot be something that we force from the top. But I would like that we have been lucky here. We have the chairman from the Norwegian chapter. I would like him to say something about what is happening there,
Yeah, that
and as a background for discussions and for the questions here. And you're leaving quite soon, I know, so it would be good that you have the opportunity now.
Yeah, thank you for that. My name is Terje Dammen. As you say, we are quite a group in Norway. We are actually a lot of members in our local chapter. Currently, we actually run 6 to 7 seminars each year. It's all voluntary. We only pay a small amount of members' fee. We have some support companies, all from rail to oil and gas, aviation. It's an informal seminars. We like to discuss topics that interest our members. The level of the thoughts or topics discussed, we don't need papers, we don't present summaries or whatever, just a presentation. And it's an open and honest discussions of the topics, all from risk acceptance criteria down tolerance criteria, how to manage uncertainty, etc., etc. So it varies a lot. And why have we been able to do that for 20 years? I've asked that myself the question. And obviously there's some strong universities in Norway working a lot with these topics, as Terje and also back in Trondheim. There are some strong research institutes, and also the strong oil and gas industry. As actually, it's quite of these topics to discuss in these seminars are oil and gas related, obviously, but not only. We are we are a small community and such, because it's we have a good oversight of who is doing what, more or less. We like to share our knowledge. We are proud of what we do in Norway, and we like to share that. And that maybe, and we are open and honest in our communication. That maybe is the basics in that also, that we can see that this is working in Norway. We discuss this, we like to share what we think and what we have discovered in our research, or whatever practical application we have for what we do. Practically, we actually have assigned some, the practicalities are done by a separate company for us, so we're just focusing in our share committee to actually arrange those seminars. And we divide the efforts amongst us. So we are about 6 persons in that chair. We divide the efforts across. So yes.
And how is the link to the ESREL here? I mean,
no
bad relationship.
As you see, as a lot of delegates here today, and this week, that's from Norway, and a lot of them are part of the same community.
You could just look at the blonde, tall guys and girls.
How many from Norway are here that are a member of ESREL Norway? Not so many.
A lot of them are the plane that I need to catch now, so leaving at 5 o'clock.
But actually, I feel that that they have their own life. I mean, there has been some coming here, but there are very few sort of being member of technical committees, for example. So it is not. It is a life that is. I think the chairman of ESREL Norway has not often been at ESREL International, to be honest. You are here now. Yeah, so I think that the relationship has not been that strong, to be honest. And therefore we also have this kind of discussion here. Yeah. First of all, is it really something we should encourage other countries? Okay, and how can we actually strengthen the link? If that is actually a goal.
I think we should. We have an opportunity in 2 years then, arranging the ESREL in Trondheim, in Norway, so that we may get involved in that.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. there's a comment, but certainly a reflection needs to be done at the level, the local level, and the international ESRA level, to see if there are shared objectives and shared mission and any ways to collaborate more. Yes.
So, a couple of thoughts. As a member of the UK's Safety and Reliability Society Council, we are the ESRA chapter for the UK, and we do that because we have the same desire that has just been said by our colleagues in Norway. We're proud of what we do, we want to share.
Yes.
But if someone was going to want to set up a UK ESRA chapter, that would be a conflict, that would be competition in our thing. So
exactly.
The model that you're trying to encourage, more international debate, is good, but we don't want to conflict with anything that's already established, trying to do the same thing. What we want to do is create a network so that we're better at communicating and learning together. So you need to have some intelligence and understanding about what else is there in the market, and we know there's lots of other safety and reliability conferences out there, and there's lots of other safety and reliability bodies out there. So for me, the discussion is, how do we join up better than we do today?
Yeah, I mean, in UK, it's sort of obvious. You have sort of the relevant organizations in this country. But I think that maybe other countries' situation may be different. Therefore, talking about that is sort of the local, each country has to sort of see what are their sort of proper organizations. And I see, for example, we have now popping up Society for Risk Analysis Nordic chapter, and it's very much Swedish, actually, rooted, I would say. Norway, we have our own ESRA. And so Sweden has a need for something, and they has created this kind of ESRA Nordic.
So we're under UK law, we're a charitable body. So it's part of we're an education and professional charity. So it's part of our charter that we should be sharing and educating. So encouraging a Swedish branch isn't a problem, but it would equally not be a problem if they were an offshoot of the UK branch or the Norwegian branch, or there was some other joint thing. I think we should just, whatever works. Maybe we should use some more modern technologies. I'm also a member of the United States International System Safety Society, and they do a conference every year. So they've got a virtual chapter that's sort of linked through LinkedIn. So why don't we Skype each other, or share things online, and do it virtually as well as physically. There's lots of ways to skin this.
I mean, obviously I've been, as you know, I've been involved in ESRA in different ways for many years, and I remember going back that there was sometimes a discussion about whether ESRA was an umbrella organization or whether it was a member organization, and that has never really been resolved, because there's actually simultaneously it's more or less both. And I think that what tends to happen is that there's quite a lot of focus on the individual institutions, such as universities or companies that are members, and probably there's been less emphasis more recently on the national members. And as Alan says, there's no point in trying to set up an alternative to the one we have. And in the countries where there's a national chapter or a national organization, that's fine. What would be interesting is, of course, in terms of development for ESRA, is to look at the countries where that doesn't exist. And there you could think about trying to establish ESRA chapters as a priority if there's enough people coming to the conference, so that you're seeding a new national organization there. That would be a useful thing. And it may also be that in some countries, the very, very small countries, that they just don't have enough people within a country to sustain themselves, and then a sort of regional ESRA chapter might be, again, an alternative way. But I think it would be useful to maybe think about that for the next conference. Are there ways in which these national chapters or national organizations can be given a bigger role alongside the individual institutions like companies and universities?
Yes, this is, if you compare to Society for Risk Analysis, they have a lot of regional chapters, and they could be national or regions, exactly like that. But I'm not sure we will do the same, but this is discussion we have here, and other countries I mean, it has to be some individuals that are really also taking the driving seat. Otherwise, we can't do it. So, okay, I saw one comment here.
So, good afternoon, Andrei Volkanovsky, Joint Research Center. Mine is connected to question 2, but also question 5. So, this year we finished topical study on the events in power grid which affects nuclear power plants. Among others, we have all the French and German nuclear power plants in the last 20 years. So, those who want can come to me and I can tell you the summary report is open to the public and everyone can get it. And then
except there is in a different time zone, and that's why he answered.
No. Now I go to question 5, and that's the point that maybe it's good to think about. The colleague mentioned that the modern technologies, and this report is somewhere in the web space of European Commission, so you can get the link, and if you look for that one, you're going to find it. But we are distributing those studies only on the predefined list of email recipients we think are going to use it. Yeah, and if there is some space, let me say, within the association or the internet website where people voluntarily can provide either the links, either the original files, the possibility for distribution of the information will be much bigger. So maybe that's a good point to think maybe in that direction to create some space where on different topics, of course, not to be everything in same bunch, but on specific topics, people can provide the, let me say, interesting information. Thank you.
Well, you also have the technical committees that sort of provide sort of a network within that area so that you can sort of exchange communication. If it works as it maybe as intended, there is a potential also to use these committees. And now, as you know, what I mentioned on Monday, that you promised me so clearly to sort of sign up on this, this form for what committees that you would like to sort of be linked to and have a network with. And I've got some, but not from all, for sure. So I hope you will do that, because it's important to create these kind of networks with these people for different areas. We have 27. That's actually quite huge. The potential is there, but we're not using it sufficiently at this moment, I feel. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, these were the questions that we have received by email before the conference. Now, of course, the floor is really open for questions, for comments on technical topics that you want to discuss because you want to take the benefit of having a number of experts here in the room. And also, I think we could open for comments and questions about ESREL conference, things that we were not or you were expecting at the conference and you did get or you did not get, things that we can improve. I mean, just a very open discussion. I mean, I asked one of my PhD students before, she's now chatting on her mobile phone, but if she first time in ESREL, she said, I said, well, did you enjoy the conference? Did you find it? And she said, yeah, I mean, there was a social event every night. And actually, I thought she would say, yeah, the scientific content, and I learned a lot, but she forgot to say that. So anything that you want to comment, again, on the conference, on ESRA, and more importantly, on technical issues that don't make you sleep at night, we can try to help your dreams to a certain level. We need to still be politically correct, right? No. Yes.
I came from the United States, as we discussed.
I remember that.
Now you know that, right? What I was interested in, kind of how much percolation the Internet of Things had and the big data, and I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't see much talk about what fundamentally happens now in a lot of companies all over the world when we have the propagation of the big data technologies and they come And you know that I wrote an article about this half a year ago, but I do think that's a big problem, and I think it needs to be discussed how we in reliability facing the problem that a lot of people at the executive level think that all the problems are already solved and they can apply this big data analytics and solve all our problems and get rid of us completely because engineering knowledge is not needed and the machine learning will do all what we do now. And I think this is something that we need to address as a community, otherwise we risk losing the money and influence and things like that. And so that's I think
it's not only big data. I mean, you said Internet of Things. Internet of Things is going to impact some of the comments that was made before. It's going to impact tremendously some of the questions that are addressed there on the supply of material that respect the requirements and how you control this opening of the way that we manufacture in the end our products. So it's really changing completely the scenario, and it is to be expected that there will be a trend in the discussions in meetings like this, in ESREL conferences, that's going to have to address that, not just because we're going to miss the business, but because we still need to make sure that our products and systems are reliable and that we do not add, let's say, risks when we go to do everything smart. Because before we were not doing anything smart, now we do everything smart, and maybe we need to control that. So certainly that's something that's being we have not seen very much in this conference. I think we should go to that direction.
I agree, and I think that there are topics like that, and if you sort of would like it to happen, it's often that, okay, you can take initiative, making a special session, that you sort of make a presentation yourself, and you invite some people. I think I have started to do that for Society Risk Analysis in the conferences there. Try to make sort of own defined sessions to ensure that you sort of get something that is really in the core of interest. And this sort of, the way we're doing things, open up for this kind of initiatives. And I think that's sort of it's a perfect way of doing it, because it's benefit you, but also many others, because you get the hot topics.
Even more, you can even, put together a national chapter. The United States national chapter of the European safety. That would be beautiful. Yeah, I forgot about it. Well, it depends if Trump wins. I don't think it's going to be doable. Absolutely. Okay, that's one point that we need to stimulate. Yeah, we need to stimulate. Sorry. Somebody else also can comment. Okay? This is like usual. In the first rows, the students, the nerds are in the first row. And
can actually be quiet if the student's got a better question than mine. Well, while you think, just to add to the gloom of societal risk assessment and governance and the Internet of Things, one of the things that I'm beginning to worry about is this other, particularly senior management politician idea that when something's broken and there's a supply chain problem, they'll just, probably with an app, find a Google design and then they'll just 3D print it and then replace the thing. And away we go again. So how do we risk assess that, and how do we understand that the reliability, safety, the dependability of that thing is actually fitting our initial assessments?
Yeah, or the standards even.
Yeah.
That goes back to this.
I also would like to hear somebody that was saying, I love this session or something like that. I had several. I mean, I was just the last one now about these tutorials. This is something new that we have that coming in ESREL 2016. I think that was brilliant, very good, in-depth, 1.5 hour, gave the opportunity to give sort of an overview of the area. I think it was super. Anyone would like to give a comment on this?
I'll give a somewhat more general comment as one of the other Americans who crossed the line to come. I forget who it was, but somebody's asked me earlier today, why do you come to this conference? And I think part of what's attractive...
For the good weather.
Yeah, exactly. For the good weather with no rain. No, it's diverse. The topics covered are diverse. There's technical sessions on lots of different areas of risk, and I think that's kudos to the organizers, because it's always been more diverse than some other conferences, which I think is a really good thing, and it gets the discussions going, and we can learn from others doing risk and reliability work in other areas.
Yes.
Comment and questions?
This is sort of a balance there. You need to have sort of your own family, so to say, but you open up for some, and you do that often in the plenary, but you also need sort of this in-depth to get a good overview and stimulating sort of discussion. But it's not only 15 minutes covering a small sort of contribution. So I think this kind of balance is good.
Yes. I'm Usha Menon from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and I see that I'm the only Canadian here for this conference, and this is the first of the kind I have attended. I should say that it is
You're also the best Canadian in this conference also.
Thank you. Thank you for that compliment. And I should say it's a very well organized, and we too organized an international workshop in 2014, and I think there was like 116 participants, but that from all over the world, and it wasn't an easy task, and I think I commend the organizers. In terms of the technical presentations, there was a little bit of juggling between sessions. I wanted to attend all of them actually, but I chose which was useful for me. Coming from a nuclear regulator, I found it very interesting that some of the challenges being faced by the oil and natural gas industry is similar. I would like to specifically, take you to the session I attended with the Safety and Reliability Society by Dr. Denning, and I felt that I concur with whatever was being said there, especially coming from the regulator in Canada. We face similar issues now there, the challenges in risk communication. I think that's something we all should be, now that I heard UK is going into nuclear big, and this is something which is very important internationally to get into more. And of course, the part where there is this, attrition of, people, retiring and being replaced, and an attempt is being made, at least in the Canadian Nuclear Regulatory Organization, is to get new grads into the system and do like a co-op during their studies, show them the interest, develop, rotate them within the organization so that they develop interest, and when they finish their graduation, they can decide to come and join the nuclear organizations. I think this is something which I would like to convey, and I would like to thank everybody, and I will go back and surely recommend, either we, become part of, I don't know if we can, we become part of the technical committees, sure, because we have a lot of expertise there too. And yeah, thank you very much.
Well, for fairness, you can also have a national chapter under the European Civil Association, like your friends from the US. Or you could have a regional one. You could have a regional one, but
a small one, yeah. Small one.
And Mexico.
Yes, we should close.
Okay, I think we can stop here with the questions. I just had one comment regarding the sessions. Tarja, this session was very good. Thank you very much. I loved it. You wanted to hear that?
Thank you very much. But actually, I forgot to say something in the beginning, and that was that the idea came from Enrico Zio. No. So I'm very happy that he is still an active ESRA person. We do need him, not only for dancing, but also for the scientific content. Singing, dance, oh yeah, of course. Dancing is something new. But I mean, he's also good in that. But the singing is really the key thing when it comes to Enrico Zio. And we should sort of also force him to take the students. That should also be a part of the formula for 2017. So thank you for attending.
Yeah, thank you all for staying here until today, last session, and I think it was very useful. And of course, I think that we can take the opportunity to congratulate officially the organizers of this conference, because they really did a great job.
There is a closure now coming up, and then I was supposed to give the word to Tim, because he will sort of lead this closure, and then we have the opportunity to thank them all, because they need that, because they've done a great job. Thank you.
We had to have the right slide on here. Well, so that's pretty much the end. And we want to thank you all for coming, and actually also to thank you all for staying right to the very end. It's been actually really wonderful to host this conference here. I think we've really enjoyed having our scientific friends and colleagues come and visit Glasgow, see the wonderful facilities, experience our wonderful warm and sunny climate, of course, and enjoy all the things that Scottish culture has got to offer, which I think has certainly changed some people's lives. I think various people came up to that. So we had about more than 500 people, we had more than 400 papers, we had about 20% of the people were coming from industry, so it's been a good balance. I'm sorry. 20% of people coming from industry. We had lots of new stuff going on in this program. So, as was already mentioned, the keynote tutorials, images of risk, an app, and that great scientific program where you could learn more about the things you actually know about already, but the tutorials, so that you could know about the things, learn about the things you didn't yet know already. And the Scottish country dancing, so that you could find out about the parts of your body that you didn't realize you had already. Yeah. So we've got to thank a few people like the sponsors and the exhibitors. We've got to thank ESREL for their support. In particular, thank SARS for its support as our ESREL national chapter. We've got to thank in conference, the conference organisers who've played a fantastic role, getting up very, very early every morning to be here, staying with us all right until the end of every one of those social events. So Louise and Leona in particular and the other staff have done a great job. The TIC conference staff here in catering and conference support, and of course the conference guides wearing these t-shirts. Can we give them all a big round of applause there for all the work that they've done? And I'll hand over to Leslie as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add my thanks particularly to the Technical Programme Committee, because although we've been here the last few days enjoying ESREL, over the last few months, many members of that committee have been involved in reviewing papers, providing feedback, etc., etc. So what really surprised me, and pleasantly I'm glad to say, was the total support from everybody on the Technical Programme Committee and the reviewer. So I'd like to personally just thank you for all that support over the last few months. Thank you.
So Terry, you wanted to say a couple of words as well.
Well, just a few. Thank you. I also like to say thank you to you, Tim, as the chairman of this conference, and Leslie and Matthew in particular. Could you please raise up and we could give you some strong applause. It's not possible to do this job, ESREL conference, without really being 100% committed, and these have been it all the time and done a great job, and we are so happy, and I really felt that this has been going very well, and this is because of very good planning on all levels, and you have had the leading role in this. We have been supporting you, and there are so many other people that you mentioned already. And don't forget all the chairs and all the reviewers. We all take part in this sort of big family event. So it's, for me, it's good to see that this tradition is really going fine. And I'm confident that also it will be nice next year, and we can take experience from this year. There are a lot of sort of good ideas that we can hopefully also transfer to the coming years. So again, thank you to ESREL 2016 local organizers.